So now we start the topic signal. As we have discussed that the signal is related to the cell signaling, where the signal is the molecule or the stimuli in response to which the response is generated, in against which response is generated. So signal can be of two types. One is direct and another is indirect. Direct has some unique properties. That is, direct cell to cell contact can be there, that is direct signaling, and physical contact must be there. If there is physical contact, then it will be direct signaling. So here indirect, but in case of indirect, there should be release of signaling molecule. Any signaling molecule can be released, and signal molecule which can be released from cell is free and secreted molecules, that is secreted from the cells. That's why it is called secreted molecules, and it can be discussed elaborately with some diagrams. So these are the diagrams. Here this is a cell, and this cell have secreted signaling molecule, and this is another cell that have receptors. So here the ligand, this is called ligand, signaling molecule or ligand. This ligand reacts with this ligand binds to the receptor, and this is formed this leads to the formation of receptor or ligand complex or receptor signal complex. And this, under the direct signaling, there is juxtacrine interaction. Juxtacrine interaction means, what is juxtacrine? Juxtacrine means adjacent. Two adjacent cell when interact each other. Suppose it is a cell and this is a cell. So these are adjacent to this. These are adjacent to this, and these are adjacent to this. And these have ligand and these are receptor. So this is called juxtacrine interaction. Adjacent cell interaction is called juxtacrine interaction. And there is another example is ligand receptor transmembrane protein. Now come to indirect signaling. Here this is a cell, and it has synthesized some signals, and it released those signals. And there is another cell which has receptor, and this signal binds to the receptor and forming the receptor signal complex, and those receptor signal complex leads to the formation of response. So this is indirect signaling. Basically indirect signaling is of three types. Now come to the types of indirect signaling. There are three types of indirect signaling. First one is autocrine signaling, and the second one is paracrine signaling, and third one endocrine signaling. Here autocrine signaling means auto means self. So auto is there, it is discussed through a diagram. It is a cell that synthesizes signal, and it releases the signals in the cytoplasmic matrix, and these signals binds to the receptor of its own receptor. The cell has surface receptors, and these receptors binds to the signal that has generated by the self cell, and this leads to the formation of receptor signal complex, and thus response is generated. This is autocrine signaling, and examples are IL-2 signal. IL-2 signal means IL-2 is a interleukin 2 receptor. So there is a T cell. In T cell there is IL-2 signal is produced, and then the T cell has its own receptors, and this IL-2 signals signaling molecules are bind to this IL-2 receptors. This is self generated, this is self signal. So in autocrine signaling, cell itself release signal molecules, and this signal binds on its own cell surface receptors and activate it, and thus response is generated. Now come to the second example, which is cancer. So in cancer cells, cell proliferation can be occur, and this is occurs due to overexpression factor, which generates growth factors, which generates or synthesize some growth factors inside the cancer cell, and cancer cell are overexpressed to be released these growth factors, and cancer cell has its own growth factor receptors, which is on the surface of the cell, cancer cell, and those receptors bind to this growth factor signaling molecule, and thus forming to the receptor signal complex, and this leads to the cell proliferation and cell survival. So these are the two examples of autocrine signaling, and now we are going to paracrine signaling. Paracrine signaling, here we can see that this is a cell which synthesizes or releases some signal, and then it transports to the another cell which has receptors, and the signal binds to those receptors, and the response is generated. This is paracrine signaling. It may be local signaling, adjacent cell signaling, that is juxtacrine signaling, or neighboring cell signaling. Here signal is secreted in low concentration, and mostly signal are unstable and degraded. So signals survive for a short period of time because it is secreted in low concentration. Examples of this paracrine signaling are prostaglandin, serotonin, histamine, thromboxanes, leukotrienes. This prostaglandin, serotonin, histamine, these three are generally local signaling molecule that is responsible for inflammation. These three are responsible for inflammation, whereas thromboxanes for blood clotting, and there are several growth factors signaling molecules. Those are epidermal growth factors, nerve growth factors, platelet derived growth factors. These are something, and there are another examples that can be synaptic signaling. Synaptic signaling is a neuromuscular that occurs in neuromuscular junction generally, and in between synaptic cleft, in the synaptic cleft region, there is exchange of signaling molecule and the receptor binding in the post synaptic neurons, and the acetylcholine signaling can be occurred. This is paracrine signaling. Next is endocrine signaling. Endocrine signaling basically occurs in pancreas glands, several glands, endocrine glands. That is, their group of cells release signals, and this occurs in pituitary glands, adrenal glands, several endocrine glands. How this can be occurred? Here, the cell, that is group of cells, release some signals, and these signals are transported to the capillary blood, and those capillary blood carries the signal. This is blood carrying the signals, and those signals are transported to another capillary via blood, and there is responding cells that has receptors, and those signals are received by those receptors, and they binds to these signals, and it can leads to the response. These are the endocrine signaling, and it can occurs in alpha cells like glucagon, beta cells, in insulin, in pancreas, and there are several glands like adrenal gland,